When we heard about a drug that is changing the lives of people with diabetes, we knew we had to look into it. It's called Afrezza. It's the only drug of its kind, and it's been on the market for more than 7 years. But patients and doctors alike tell us it just doesn't have the name recognition.
So why should you care? The CDC says 11% of the U.S. population has diabetes, about 1 in every 10 people. And it has a big impact on communities of color, especially Indigenous, Black, and Hispanic Americans. ABC 10's Becca Habegger has the story.
I was diagnosed in 1983. I was 13 years old. That puts me at 38 years living with type 1 diabetes.
Anthony Hightower, his partner Letty Santana.
I was diagnosed in 1999.
And their friend Matt Macedo.
I came late to the party. I got diagnosed at 25.
All have type 1 diabetes.
It could be a very lonely disease if you don't have that support.
They're part of a Sacramento-based group called Duck Diabetes, which Anthony started years ago as a team name for a cycling event.
And now, we have this community of diabetics here locally in Sacramento, and so we've hosted roller skating parties, baseball games.
They tell other diabetics about a medicine that has changed their lives. But to understand how it works, it's important to know this.
Diabetes is a condition where your pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin.
Dr. Adila Ansari of Mercy Medical Group explains we all need insulin to turn blood sugar or glucose into energy that fuels our bodies.
It is important for your blood sugar to be at certain range, and if patients have diabetes, it results in much higher level of blood sugar, which leads to, in long run, more complication affecting your eyes, your kidneys, nerves, and high risk of strokes and heart disease.
There are several types of diabetes, and we won't get into the specific differences here, but generally, type 1 patients have to put insulin into their body every day, and some type 2 patients do as well. The most common way by far is through liquid insulin that can be taken by injection or by using a pump, which involves an insulin dispenser connected to a small tube placed just under the skin. People who use insulin to control their blood sugar levels take extra around a meal or snack. That's because the food will raise their blood sugar level and they need the insulin to help lower it back to a safe range. But as Anthony explains, figuring out the timing and the dosage is complicated.
An injection for me takes about 45 minutes to an hour to start working, which is very difficult. If you're going out to eat, you don't know what you're going to pick, but yet you still have to guess and count your carbs and figure out what you're going to have, take your insulin based on those calculations, and then 45 minutes to an hour later, if your food's not ready, you could be in trouble. So now what a lot of people are doing is they're just taking their injections once their food is there or right when they order it. But at that point, now you're dealing with these high blood sugars because you've already eaten, but you've only taken your insulin just before you've eaten. So now your blood sugars are sky high for 45 minutes to an hour or so before your insulin starts to kick in. And then the traditional insulins continue to work for 3 to 5 hours. So now your food's out of your body, your insulin's still working, and you're dropping below that low level. So now you're feeling these post-meal hypoglycemic reactions. Hypoglycemic reactions are when your blood sugar drops below a certain levels and gives you this feeling of like you're about to die.
But Matt, Anthony, and Letty, all of whom used liquid insulin for years, say that's not a problem for them anymore. They now use an insulin delivery method that's inhaled. It's the only one on the market, and it's been available for about 7 years. It's called Afrezza.
Having the liquid insulin was always a struggle, and then getting the medication just right. Going from that to Afrezza has just been absolutely life-changing. It's been so freeing.
I would say it's absolutely life-changing.
It's changed my life as far as my diabetes is concerned.
Instead of having to calculate the exact amount of liquid insulin to take based on a guess of the amount of carbs in a meal, Afrezza comes in just 3 different doses.
We don't even count carbs. I don't count carbs anymore. I just see a meal and see small, medium, large, and dose accordingly.
That kind of just gives you a range. As long as you're within this range, you're fine.
But Afrezza is a whole new way of thinking about insulin.
The biggest benefit, they say, is how quickly Afrezza gets to work and then gets out of their system.
You have a noticeable effect between 10 and 12 minutes. We can see it because we all wear a thing called a continuous glucose monitor, and that goes in every 5-minute increments. So after about 3 dots or 15 minutes after you've inhaled, you'll see a noticeable effect where if you're starting to trend up, it starts to level out and then starts to go back down to the level that you want it to be.
Liquid insulin is 4 hours out of your system. Afrezza is out in 90 minutes.
The beauty of Afrezza is the speed in and speed out. It's not necessarily that's an inhaled. To me, that's a bonus. Now I actually take it when my meal is delivered to me. So While my food is now digesting it out of my system, my blood sugar is starting to level out because Afrezza is leveling out.
I definitely can tell you it's a game changer for patients.
Dr. Ansari says Afrezza is faster acting because of how the inhaled insulin is absorbed into the bloodstream through the lungs.
The majority of the injectable insulin are delivered through capillary system, which takes longer time to really peak and stay longer in your system. But when you look at the Afrezza, it really delivers the insulin directly into the arterial blood system. So it goes quickly into taking effect very fast as opposed to the injectable.
Your Dippin' Dots ice cream. So like those freeze little pellets, we freeze dry Afrezza nitrogen in a monomeric form. So as soon as you inhale in your lungs, it releases the technology into your blood. So there's no waste, there's no time waiting for it to travel through your tissue.
Michael Castagna is CEO of Mankind, the company that makes Afrezza. He says there are about 3,000 doctors throughout the U.S. who prescribe Afrezza and about 10,000 patients taking it, a fraction of 1% of the people who could potentially benefit.
There's about 4 million, 5 million people who live with diabetes on insulin every day for their mealtime control.
So I asked him,
this has been on the market for some 7 years. People who use it call it life-changing. Why isn't it more widely used and known about?
I would say two main things. I've worked on this for 5 years now. So what first was the company didn't have a lot of money, so therefore we couldn't raise awareness.
This is no large company. Although Mankind has several drugs in the pipeline, Afrezza was its first on the market, with a second one launching this summer.
I'd say the number one thing is the majority of people do not know it exists. And then the second one is doctors, because they were trained on injectable insulin. They know injectable insulin. We didn't train the US doctors on inhaled insulin. Doctors just don't believe it sometimes, and it's very frustrating. I tell them, get your own clinical experience. Why wait?
Well, a version of Afrezza for kids is still in trials. Meanwhile, the drug is not cheap, but the company says there's financial assistance available for some patients.
And they encourage anyone with questions to reach out. We have more information at abc10.com.